Hello, my name's Ruth Childs. Many of you already know me and of my work with Focal Dystonia, but for those of you who don't, I've spent many years now successfully working and treating Focal Dystonia. And I have probably a very unique approach in doing that, which is why I'm being very successful, because it's really getting right to the absolute, like a scalpel, right to the absolute to the cause and to its resolution. So I've been recording this series of videos to talk about where focal dystonia comes from, what's causing it, and how it can be treated. And my purpose for this is as much as anything educational, because there's so much negative information available around that focal dystonia is uncurable, and it's really not the case. And I really want to give you hope that yes, you can cure your focal dystonia completely and very successfully, and just for you to understand more about what's going on and what's causing it and what you can do about it. Okay, so today what I wanted to do was expand a little bit more, or go another step forwards from what I recorded last time. So last time I was talking about early attachment, but particularly talking about that our nervous system gets calibrated into safety or into danger, into threat mode, depending on mainly our mother's ability, but our caretaker's ability to attune to us. Okay, so what I mean by attune is that he or she is able just to really, without words, know what's going on for us, who we are, what we need, and be able to respond to that. Because as small children, we do not have the capacity to self-regulate our nervous system. So if we feel under threat or uncomfortable, or something emotional has happened to us, we actually aren't able to calm ourselves down. It's actually by our mother's attunement that this co-regulation happens, where we're able to calm ourselves down. Okay, so that was just to resume, that was what I talked about last time. And some of us have had parents or care figures who, for their own personal reasons, their own personal story, aren't able to do that for us. And so what's happened is the nervous system becomes calibrated into threat mode, into survival mode. And that becomes normalized. Actually, often we don't even know that we're in survival mode. We think that it's normal. But what I wanted to talk about was how this often leads to a particular relationship with music and with our instrument. So for many people who have not had that secure attachment, if we want to put that label on it, as a child, meaning where our nervous system very early has got calibrated into survival mode, music has often been the only area, or one of the only places, in which we feel safe, in which life has meaning, in which things seem to fit together, in which I feel at one with myself, and I feel okay with myself and with something that's other than myself. So as a result, what's happened is that music becomes almost a replacement for our attachment figure, our attachment person. It is our place of safe attachment, and often our instrument becomes a projection of that figure that we need in our secure attachment. So we feel secure with our musical instrument. I can certainly remember feeling that way. And I've had other musicians talk to me about how they would take their instrument to bed with them, for instance, at night, because it gave them that sense of security, that sense of meaning, that sense of understanding and being understood. And that's often why, as small children, we've probably spent much more time on our instrument than an average person would in terms of playing and practicing a musical instrument, which is partly why we've become so very, very good at music. However, there's something that then will happen as we become older, and the neocortex, the thinking part of our brain, begins to develop. Bear in mind that the part of your brain that makes sense of things, that puts things into context, that puts things into right or wrong, good or bad, understanding things, forming an opinion, that part of the brain doesn't become fully developed until between 25 to 30 years old. And so as that process happens and we start to have this more rational mind, more thinking mind, then that's when our relationship with that secure attachment can often begin to change. And then it often begins to change because of outside influences as well. So it's our own internal relationship, and then also those outside relationships and those outside influences will have a direct impact on that. So for instance, I went through a very demanding classical training. As a little kid, I just started to play the recorder. I picked my brother's recorder up when I was maybe 3 years old and just started to play and played along, and it was fun and it was joy and it was something that had meaning to me, and it just flowed. And then as I began my formal musical education, I was being taught through my neocortex, which actually isn't the part that controls the physiology of the body, the fine motor skills that are required to play the instrument. And so what started to happen was that safe place started to deteriorate. And when it begins to deteriorate, either because of our own doubts about ourselves or because we find ourselves in an environment within music that isn't completely safe, be it a practice environment, be it an educational environment, the other people that are around us. The music world's often very full of people vying for attention, people wanting to be better, comparison, competition, and that's not safe. And so as we find ourselves where this sacred place that we've held onto so preciously as our place of safety suddenly isn't safe any longer, that deteriorates rapidly. And in terms of what's happening in our neurosystem, is that suddenly the neural networks that we had around safety actually get flipped into the opposite. So we can often, at a very deep level, and often much of this is unconscious, actually starts to change the relationship with the instrument, with music, begins to deteriorate into music and the instrument being a threat. And when that starts to happen is when our nervous system then, all those threat responses that we've learnt in our nervous system from other events around us in our life, then begin to get completely interlinked in our relationship to the instrument and to the music. And that's why then, if we go back to the other videos, how I've talked about how once that happens, what's happening is your brain is inhibiting your fine motor skills and trying to direct all its control, all its movements into gross muscle strength and preparation of the gross muscle fibers, because that's what it needs if we feel under threat, if we're in survival mode. So as it does that, then that's where this connection with our fine motor skills and this capacity starts to become blurred and begins to fall over in terms of the connections in the brain. So I just wanted to explain that, and it's not this isn't the case for everybody, because not everybody has had such difficult attachment issues early in life. It's certainly not the case for 100% of people that suffer from focal dystonia, but it is the case for a significant proportion of us. So I really wanted to share this with you, so you also get that perspective, and I'm sure there are many of you that can relate to this aspect of focal dystonia. I certainly can. It certainly was my story in terms of my relationship with music, with my instrument, and the onset of the dystonic symptoms that I had. So I hope that makes sense to you, and for those of you that can relate to that it gives you some other clues as to just this deeper level that we need to work at, and why, I talked about other videos, and I know there are quite a few people that talk about this in terms of healing focal dystonia, why the importance of being able to develop a new relationship with music and with your instrument, a relationship of well-being, of peace and of flow, is so vitally important in your recovery. So I really, really wish you well, and wish you speed and wellness on your recovery and coming back to your full passion and your full abilities with music and your musical expression. Thanks for listening to me.